First class on Flight 712 shimmered with quiet luxury until a single exchange froze the cabin. Dr. Gloria Desmond, elegant in her navy blazer, had just been served the airline's prized halibut when senior purser Brenda Jenkins appeared at her side. Her smile was thin, her tone cutting. "This meal isn't for you," she said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Gloria's hand stilled on the fork. "Is that so?" she replied, calm but unyielding. Brenda leaned closer, voice dripping with authority. "Policy. I'll be taking it back." Moments later, the sound of porcelain shattering in the galley trash echoed like a gavel. Passengers stared in stunned silence. Gloria sat motionless, eyes burning with quiet resolve. No one knew she wasn't just another traveler. She was the woman who owned the entire catering empire feeding the airline. And Brenda Jenkins had just started a war she could never win. Subscribe now. This story only gets bigger. The cabin had gone silent after the tray crashed into the trash, but the silence carried beyond that moment. It stayed in the air, thick and suffocating, as Dr. Gloria Desmond sat motionless in her seat. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, whispering under their breath, unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. Brenda Jenkins, however, walked back down the aisle with the pride of a soldier returning from battle. In her mind, she had restored order. To her, the halibut had never been about food. It had been about control. Gloria's fingers brushed against the closed leather journal on her tray. She slid it open with deliberate calm and began to write, her pen gliding across the page with a precision that matched the fury coiled deep inside her. She wrote down the time. She wrote down the words Brenda had used. She wrote down the expressions on the faces of the people nearby. Every detail mattered, because Gloria was not simply recording her feelings. She was building evidence. She paused only once when a young attendant, Samantha, leaned in quietly. Her voice was trembling, soft as a whisper. "Dr. Desmond, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." Gloria lifted her eyes, and the kindness in her gaze cut through Samantha's panic. "You did nothing wrong," she said gently. "You showed kindness. That is rare and it matters. Don't lose it." Samantha's eyes watered with relief, but before she could reply, Brenda's sharp voice echoed from the galley. "Samantha, focus on your duties." The words sliced the air like a blade. Samantha flinched and quickly moved away. Gloria watched the young woman retreat, her jaw tightening. She had seen this pattern before, the crushing of compassion under the weight of arrogance. And she knew exactly what it did to people, to organizations, to entire systems. The hours of the flight dragged on, each second steeped in tension. Gloria declined drinks, declined snacks, declined every shallow attempt at apology. She kept writing. The glow of her pen beneath the cabin lights was a quiet act of war. By the time the wheels touched the runway at Heathrow, her notes were a blueprint for justice. When the passengers disembarked, Brenda lingered near the gate, laughing with the captain as though nothing had happened. Her confidence was unshakable, built on 28 years of service that she believed made her untouchable. Gloria walked past her with steady steps, pulling her carry-on behind her. Their eyes met for just a second. Brenda's smirk was dismissive, almost mocking. She had already forgotten seat 3A. But Gloria had not. The next morning in Canary Wharf, the glass-walled headquarters of Artisan Sky Provisions came alive with the hum of ambition. Chefs tested recipes in spotless kitchens, logistics experts mapped supply chains, and analysts monitored screens of glowing data. This empire was Gloria's creation, and she was about to use it as her weapon. Her second-in-command, Leo Vance, entered her office carrying 2 tablets and a cup of her favorite Ethiopian coffee. He looked exhausted, but his eyes burned with excitement. "You were right," he said without sitting. "The complaints, the data, they tell a completely different story than Aura's official reports." Gloria set her journal on the desk, folded her hands, and nodded. "Show me." Leo pulled up a screen. Charts lit up with words that dripped with bitterness. Denied, rude, inconsistent. He swiped again, revealing passenger stories. humiliations, small cruelties, the sense of being judged unworthy of a meal. They've been using our food as a weapon, Leo explained. It's not the product that's failing. It's the people delivering it. Gloria's jaw tightened. And Brenda Jenkins is the face of it. Leo showed her the dossier he had assembled. Flights, complaints, patterns. Though Brenda's name never appeared, the description was unmistakable. A senior blonde purser. The JFK Heathrow route. A style of service that dripped with superiority. Over and over, the same shadow haunted the reports. She's been hiding in plain sight, Leo said. Commendations in her file, glowing reviews from superiors. But to the passengers, she's a tyrant. Gloria's voice was steady, sharp as steel. Then it's not just Brenda. It's the system that allowed her to thrive. And that's what we're going to bring down. 2 days later, in the mahogany-lined boardroom of Aura Air's headquarters, Robert Maxwell, the CEO, sat at the head of the table. His face was a mask of forced calm, but his eyes betrayed unease. Beside him, Executive VP Garrett Shaw adjusted his tie nervously. He had promised Maxwell that this meeting would be a formality, probably a complaint about a minor issue. Nothing to worry about. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doors opened. Gloria Desmond entered in a sharp charcoal suit, Leo close behind. She carried only a tablet, yet her presence filled the room with quiet power. Dr. Desmond, Maxwell began, extending his hand. We're honored. I'm certain we can resolve this quickly. Gloria's handshake was firm, her voice cool. I didn't invoke Section 11B for something minor, Mr. Maxwell. For the next 20 minutes, she laid out her case. She showed the chasm between official reports and passenger experiences. She revealed how Aura's staff had twisted Artisan Sky's food into tools of humiliation. Finally, she arrived at case study Flight 712. She described in exact detail how a senior purser had taken a passenger's halibut and thrown it in the trash. Your brand promise, she said, her eyes narrowing, reduced to a weapon of contempt. Maxwell leaned forward, horrified. This is appalling. Garrett, who was on that flight? Garrett's palms were slick with sweat. We're looking into it, sir. Gloria's expression hardened. Don't trouble yourself. I know who it was. Because I was the passenger in 3A. The words detonated in the room like an explosion. Maxwell's jaw dropped. Garrett's face turned ashen. For a long moment no one spoke. Then the intercom buzzed. Mr. Shaw, Brenda Jenkins has arrived for her meeting. Garrett froze. He had summoned Brenda, believing she was the perfect example of Aura's excellence. Now she was about to walk into her own downfall. Send her in, Gloria said softly. Brenda entered with her chin high, her uniform immaculate, expecting praise. Instead, she found silence thick enough to choke. At the far end of the table sat the woman from seat 3A. Ms. Jenkins, Maxwell growled. We've been discussing Flight 712. Brenda's smile faltered. She scrambled for excuses. There was a pre-order issue. I followed policy. You threw a meal into the trash, Gloria cut in, her voice calm but searing. Not for health and safety. Not for procedure. You did it as punishment. Brenda's face flushed. She hadn't pre-ordered. That dish is for loyal customers. And yet, Gloria said, leaning forward, I am the CEO of Artisan Sky Provisions, the company that made that dish. The company that feeds your airline. And you decided I wasn't worthy. Brenda's body went cold. Her words tangled. I didn't know. Exactly, Gloria replied. And you shouldn't have to know. Respect isn't reserved for wealth or titles. It is the bare minimum every passenger deserves. And you failed. Maxwell slammed his hand on the table. Ms. Jenkins, your career here is over. Effective immediately. Security entered. Brenda's protests dissolved into sobs as she was escorted from the room. 28 years of service ended in disgrace, all undone by arrogance. But Maxwell's fury wasn't finished. He turned on Garrett Shaw. "And you brought her here. You told me she was the standard. You are suspended, pending investigation." Garrett's shoulders collapsed. His empire of polished suits and perfect smiles crumbled in an instant. Gloria rose to her feet. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but carried the weight of final judgment. "Firing them isn't enough. If you want to keep our partnership, Aura Air will rebuild its culture from the ground up. Bias training, new protocols, transparency and feedback. And my company will oversee it." Maxwell's face was pale, his nod sharp and desperate. "Whatever you demand, it will be done." Gloria gathered her tablet and walked out with Leo at her side, leaving behind the wreckage of 2 careers and a shaken airline. The reforms came quickly. Samantha, the young attendant who had shown kindness, was promoted and became a trainer. Aura's staff entered a new era of accountability. Passengers began to notice the change. Service became warmer, more human. Respect replaced arrogance. Months later, Gloria boarded another Aura flight. Once again she sat in seat 3A. The new purser approached with a genuine smile. "Dr. Desmond, welcome back. Tonight's menu features duck, but the chef prepared a halibut as well. The choice is yours." Gloria looked around the cabin. The atmosphere was different now. Calm, welcoming, alive with kindness. A quiet smile touched her lips. The war had ended, and justice had been served. Gloria's journey did not end in that boardroom. In the weeks that followed, she watched the ripple of one quiet act spread across an entire airline. Policies shifted, faces changed, and a culture that once rewarded arrogance began to rediscover the meaning of service. Yet for Gloria, it was never about vengeance. It was about restoring dignity where it had been stripped away, about proving that even in the most rigid hierarchies, truth could still break through. She carried that lesson with her on every flight thereafter. The hum of the engines, the clink of silverware, the soft glow of cabin lights, all reminders that respect can be as fragile as porcelain and just as easily shattered if not guarded. But it can also be rebuilt stronger when people choose empathy over pride. On her next journey, when a flight attendant leaned down with a genuine smile and said, "The choice is yours," Gloria felt something shift. Not just for her, but for everyone who would step onto that plane after her. The power of change was no longer a theory. It was alive, moving through every gesture of kindness. And that is the true heart of this story. Arrogance can collapse overnight, but integrity endures. If this story moved you, help us keep telling them. Hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Real